Yes.
Okay, so this verse says, the terrible fear of birth and death can never be forsaken by anyone who resorts to any shelter other than myself. For I am the Almighty Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the original source of all creations, and also the Supreme Soul of all souls. Okay, Krishna is really explaining now who he is. No equivocation, like the absolute truth. Report by his mind.
It is indicated herein that the cycle of birth and death cannot be stopped unless one is a pure devotee of the Supreme Lord. It is said, Harim Bina Naiva, which means one cannot surpass the cycle of birth and death unless one is favored by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The same concept is confirmed herewith. One may take to the system of understanding the absolute truth by one's own imperfect sensory speculation. Or one may try to realize the self by the mystic yoga process. But whatever one may do, unless he comes to the point of surrendering to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, no process can give him liberation. One may ask if this means that those who are undergoing so much penance and austerity by strictly following the rules and regulations are endeavoring in vain. Good question. The answer is given by Srimad Bhagavatam 10:32. Ye nye Ravindaksha Vimukta Manina. Lord Brahma and other demigods prayed to the Lord when Krishna was in the womb of Devaki. My dear lotus-eyed Lord, there are persons who are puffed up with the thought that they have become liberated or one with God, or have become God, but in spite of thinking in such a puffed up way, their intelligence is not laudable. In other words, not good, basically. They are less intelligent. It is stated that their intelligence, whether high or low, is not even purified. In purified intelligence, a living entity cannot think otherwise than to surrender. There it is, surrender. Bhagavad Gita therefore confirms that purified intelligence arises in the person of a very wise man. Bahanam janmanamante jnanavamam prapadyante. After many, many births, one who is actually advanced in intelligence surrenders unto the Supreme Lord. Without the surrendering process, one cannot achieve liberation. The Bhagavatam says, those who are simply puffed up, thinking themselves liberated by some non-devotional process, are not polished or clear in intelligence, but they have not yet surrendered unto you, meaning Krishna. In spite of executing all kinds of austerities and penances, or even arriving at the brink of spiritual realization in Brahman realization, they think that they are in the effulgence of Brahman. But actually, because they have no transcendental activities, they fall down to material activities. One should not be satisfied simply with knowing that one is Brahman. He must engage himself in the service of the Supreme Brahman. That is bhakti, the engagement of Brahman should be the service of Para Brahman. It is said that unless one becomes Brahman, uh, one cannot serve Brahman. In other words, if you want to be a spiritual person, you have to come up to the level of Brahman. The Supreme Brahman is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the living entity is also Brahman without realization that he is Brahman or spirit soul, an eternal servitor of the Lord. If one simply thinks that he is Brahman, his realization is only theoretical. He has to realize and at the same time engage himself in the devotional service of the Lord. Then he can exist in the Brahman status. Otherwise, he falls down. The Bhagavatam says that because non-devotees neglect the transcendental loving service of the lotus feet of the personality of Godhead, their intelligence is not sufficient. And therefore, these persons fall down. The living entity must have some activity. If he does not engage in the activity of transcendental service, he must fall down to material activity. As soon as one falls down to material activity, there is no rescue from the cycle of birth and death. It is stated here by Lord Kapila, without my mercy, Nanyat Srimad Bhagavata. The Lord is stated here to be Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, indicating that he is full of all opulences and is therefore perfectly competent to deliver one from the cycle of birth and death. He is also called Pradhana because he is the supreme. He is equal to everyone, but no one who surrenders to him. I'm sorry, but to one who surrenders to him, he is especially favorable. It is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita that the Lord is equal to everyone. No one is his enemy, and no one is his friend. But to one who surrenders unto him, he is especially inclined. By the grace of the Lord, simply by surrendering unto him, one can get out of this cycle of birth and death. Otherwise, one may go on in many, many lives and many times attempt the other processes for liberation. Haribol, all versions to the Prabhupada teaching. Yeah. Okay, so over and over again, we're hearing about surrender. We have to actually surrender to the Supreme Personality of God. And how do we surrender? We surrender by engaging full time in devotional service. That means we're surrendered to the Lord. The Lord will accept even part-time surrender, but he will insist eventually that the devotee comes up to full-time surrender. So we have to make a decision in our life. What are we going to do? Now, one time there was Alexander the Great, and let's say his guru, was talking with him, and they were sitting uh, in they were sitting together, in Greece, and Alexander the Great was speaking to his guru. He said, "Well, my only desire, Gurudev, is to be with you, sitting like this and getting your darshan and hearing from you. But I have to first invade uh, this country and that country and this other country and this other country. And then I'll come back and sit down and be with you always." So his guru said, "But you're sitting here with me right now. Why do you have to go anywhere else?" He said, "No, no, no, I have to conquer this one and that one and the other one and the next one, and so forth." Well, he left, but he never came back. He died uh, conquering. And actually, he died by syphilis, by engaging in illicit sex somewhere in uh, in Egypt or somewhere like that. So, I mean, the guru said, "But you're sitting here now. Why do you have to go anywhere else?" He said, "No, no, no, I have to conquer this country, that country, another country, and so forth. Then I'll come back and sit here with you and get your darshan." Well, this is the what you would call illusion that people are living in. He's sitting there with his guru very peacefully, but he's thinking about the next place he has to go to conquer. Right? So that is not surrender. Surrender is that you don't go anywhere. You just sit down with the bona fide devotee and devotees and hear from them and chant and dance, have a nice prasadam, and go on Sankirtan and so forth. You don't have to conquer the world and then come back. And Alexander never made it back. He died somewhere, I don't know where, but it wasn't where he wanted to be or where he pretended that he wanted to be.
Looks like he died at the age of only 32.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Now he could have stayed with his guru, and then he would have not died so quickly. But no, and I think he died of syphilis. Is that right?
Mm, that's what I asked. Like, how did he die? They're saying like there are multiple theories, but one is possibly due to typhoid or malaria, which was common in the region where he was.
Okay.
Or others believe that he might have died from the complications of excessive alcohol consumption, leading to liver failure, pancreatitis. And then some have speculated that he may have been poisoned.
Wow. Okay.
He died in Iraq, modern day Iraq.
What?
He died in Iraq, modern day Iraq.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so he never made it back. He was with his guru in Greece, and he said, "My only desire is to be with you here today, but first I have to go here or there and there and there, and then I'm going to come back." And his guru said, "But you're here right now. Why do you have to go anywhere else?" Okay. So that was a hint. Don't go anywhere else. Just stay here. But no, he had to go out and conquer this one and that one. Okay. So this is a problem that we have. Even Prabhupada said that, he met his guru in 19, what was it, 22, I think. And he got the instruction from his guru, you should preach in the English speaking world. But he didn't start that preaching until 1955. So that's a long period of time. And he also said he should have just given everything up and at that point when his guru gave him instruction. But anyway, never uh, never late, never let's say
Better late.
never
It says the better late than
better late than never. Yeah, better late than never. Just Prabhupada started when he was always Krishna conscious, but really started preaching when he was like 70 years old. Okay, so are there any questions about this purport? Canto 3, Chapter 25, text number 42.
41.
Is it 41?
We completed 41.
Yeah.
We need to jump to 40.
I'm sorry, 49. Yes.
So if a disciple has to go up for preaching or something and can't stay with the guru, that's different, right?
Say that again.
If the disciple is going to preach or something or do something Krishna conscious, that's different than like what you said, that story about Alexander the Great.
Well, Alexander the Great was sitting with his guru, right?
Yeah.
And he said, Guru Dev, my only desire is to be with you always. But I have to first conquer this country, that country, that country, that country. And the Guru said, but you're sitting here with me now, right? So, in other words, the Guru gave him the hint, don't go anywhere, just stay here, you're already with me. But no, he had to conquer so many different countries first, and he never made it back. So in the same way, we can. There was once a man. He was. He had, a family, and he had a guru, and the guru was always trying to inspire him to give up family attachment and come and join the guru. Chanting, dancing, and so forth, preaching, so forth. So the guru, every time he would come to see the guru would say, well, are you ready now to surrender? He said, well, not quite yet, but I will. Just give me a little bit more time. So this went on for about, I don't know, 20, 30 years, right? And every time the guru said, okay, so he would go somewhere, and then he would come back and he said, well, are you ready now? He said, yeah, I'm getting ready, but I still have to do this and that. And finally, one time, after a long period, the guru came back to see him, and he wasn't there. And then he asked, his family, where is he? He said, oh, he died. So he never really, surrendered to his guru. He kept saying he's going to surrender, but he never actually did it. So this word surrender is very important. It's the most important decision we can make in our life. So you don't want to be like that. The disciple said, yes, yes, I'm going to surrender. I'm going to surrender. Just give me a little bit more time, a little bit more time, a little bit more time, and he died before completely surrendering. Or like Alexander the Great telling his guru, well, I'm so happy just to be with you, but I have to first conquer this country, that country, another country, another country. And he never made it back. So we have to be very careful about uh, there's a saying, kicking the bucket down the road. Right? It means you keep putting something off, instead of actually doing it. It's like kicking the bucket down the road. I want you to look that saying up, kicking the bucket down the road. It means putting things off, not actually doing them. Always finding a excuse for not doing what you should really be doing.
Yeah, I think it's kicking the can down the road.
Okay, kicking the can down.
Postponing or delaying a decision or action, often because of difficult or undesirable situations, or it's difficult or undesirable. It suggests that the person is putting off dealing with the problem rather than solving it.
Okay. There are a lot of people like that.
Yeah, kicking the can. Kicking the bucket is for dying.
Is what?
Is a euphemism for dying.
Uh-huh.
Kick the bucket. I mean,
Well, by kicking the bucket down the road means that you keep putting off things.
yeah, I mean, the word used in the other phrase is can, kicking the can down the
Okay,
road.
kicking the can down. Yeah. You don't want to feel like that, kicking the can down the road. Or like you might be sleeping and then you wake up and say, well, I'll just take another 10 minutes. And then you wake up 10 minutes later and say, well, I'll take another 5 minutes. And then you wake up again and say, well, I'll take another 2 minutes. You know, so having the let's say self-control to do things on time and not keep procrastinating.
Mhm.
That's a good word, procrastinating. Let's look that word up. Procrastinating. Pro.
Kicking the can.
Procrastinating.
Maharaj, it means procrastination is the act of delaying or putting off something that needs to be done, even when it is common that there could be negative consequences.
Okay. So we should not be a procrastinator in our life. Yes, mean,
Prabhupada often warned against the mindset of "I will start tomorrow." It reflects an avoidance that can keep us bound to the cycle of birth and death. In contrast, taking even small, sincere steps in spiritual practices now helps overcome the tendency to procrastinate and make spiritual progress more natural and steady. The Bhagavad Gita encourages us to act with determination and avoid letting temporary distraction or excuses interfere with our path, reminding us that it is that that reminding us that time is precious and should be used wisely for self-realization.
okay, so that's a very important statement. Time is precious.
Mm.
Time is precious.
ChatGPT,
The Veda-based ChatGPT. So this is actually good, Maharaj. The Veda-based ChatGPT link that I sent to everybody also.
Okay.
Is the same. I sent it in the verse refer. No, are you in the verse refer group? Can you also send it to Purushottam, yeah. So this one basically gives the Prabhupada's and Bhagavad Gita basically as the Vedic explanation of things. For example, here procrastination, just the word I searched. It said Bhagavad Gita in Bhagavad Gita as it is, procrastination, though not directly labeled, is addressed through the concept of overcoming inaction and adhering to one's duties. And Lord Krishna urges Arjuna to transcend inertia and doubts, focusing instead on
Inertia means doing nothing.
nothing. Yeah. And doubts, focusing instead on action in alignment with the divine duty, dharma.
Very nice phrase. Action in alignment with duty.
Divine duty, yeah.
Yeah.
This is actually interesting combination of the word divine duty is what it calls as dharma, not just what we
Not
think.
just taking care of your family or
Yeah.
taking your dog for a walk.
Here it says, perform your prescribed duty. This is in the third chapter, eighth verse. Perform your prescribed duty, for doing so is better than not working. One cannot even maintain one's physical body without work.
Right.
This verse emphasizes that inactivity and avoidance of one's responsibilities leads to dissatisfaction and ultimately counterproductive. Srila Prabhupada in his commentary explains that such inaction only reinforces material bondage and dissatisfaction, while action performed in Krishna consciousness is purifying and leads to spiritual progress. Additionally, Krishna highlights that indecision and mental weakness arise from attachment and aversion. That is raga and dvesha. And these can be overcome by maintaining a steady consciousness in devotion and selfless action, which removes hesitation and tendency to procrastinate. For overcoming procrastination, Krishna's guidance is to focus on duty without attachment to outcomes, fostering discipline and spiritual determination. Amazing. So now we should use this Veda-based Chat GPT for any of these, like what is our paramparas explanation.
It's very,
I'll send it.
very, most of the words only come from Prabhupada's words.
What?
The answers from
Yeah.
GPT comes only from Prabhupada's words.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Now.
No,
Yeah.
this is only linked to the source.
Yeah, so we shouldn't kick the bucket down the road. Meaning, we shouldn't keep putting something off. We should do it in a timely way and not be lazy. Basically, lazy people, they always kick the bucket down the road. So I'll do it later on. I'll do it later. I'll do it later on. I'll do it later on. And then they die before they do it.
Correct, Maharaj. Want to understand the difference between Atman versus Brahman. Atman refers solely to the soul. Does Brahman refer to somebody at the consciousness level? Like if they reach a certain consciousness level, they're called Brahman. But Atman is called Brahman state.
You gotta be a little careful with the word Brahman.
Yes,
It has different meanings.
yes, yeah.
But ultimately, it means that you are connected to the Supreme Brahman, right? And you're engaged in a devotional service. That is like Brahman, right? But it can have different meanings. So why don't you look that up? Does Brahman have different meanings?
What is the context used?
You'll see that word being used a lot, but it
Yes,
can
yes.
be used in different contexts.
Context, yeah. Atman just it's soul.
Atman is soul, yeah.
So what is the difference between Brahman
So here, in Bhagavad Gita as it is, Srila Prabhupada explains Brahman in various contexts, each with specific nuances within Vedic philosophy.
There it is. Go ahead.
Number one, the impersonal absolute, Brahman as the all-pervading spirit. Often Brahman refers to the impersonal, all-encompassing spiritual energy that pervades the universe. This aspect is understood as the undifferentiated, formless spiritual essence. It is the foundation of all existence and is often equal to the concept of Sat, one of the three aspects of the absolute truth. This level of realization is commonly pursued by jnanis, seekers of knowledge. Then there is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Parabrahman. While Brahman generally indicates spiritual reality, the complete highest form is known as Parabrahman, referring to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna himself. As Krishna states in Bhagavad Gita, 10th chapter, 12th, Arjuna said, "You are the Supreme, Param Brahma, Param Dhama, Pavitram, Paramam Bhavan." That verse. That you are the Supreme Brahman, the ultimate, the supreme abode, and the purifier, the absolute truth, and the eternal divine person. Here, Brahman is not only impersonal but also personal, and with Krishna as the highest and most complete form of Brahman. Then there is living entity, Jiva, or individual soul as Brahman. Living beings, Jivas, are also considered Brahman, but in a subordinate or fragmental sense. Each soul is described as a minute particle of the same quality as the Supreme Brahman, like, a ray of sunlight, as the Supreme Brahman, possessing consciousness and eternity, but limited in scope and potency. The realization of oneself as Brahman is a key aspect of spiritual enlightenment, helping one transcend identification with the temporary material body. And then Brahman as the spiritual goal or liberation. In another context, Brahman represents the ultimate spiritual goal of liberation or moksha. Here, it refers to the attainment of a state free from material bondage, where the soul exists in its pure spiritual nature, often within the realms of the impersonal Brahman effulgence or in higher realization, in personal association with the Supreme Lord. In summary, while Brahman can mean the undifferentiated spiritual energy, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the individual soul, and the liberation itself, the ultimate understanding of the Bhagavad Gita aligns Brahman most fully with the Krishna as the complete realization of the absolute truth.
So here's one word that has many levels of realization. It all depends on what is our consciousness, what are we conscious of. So Brahman can refer to a Brahmana. It can refer to the supreme absolute truth. And we have to be able to, when you learn English, you have to learn also context.
Yeah.
To read something in context. That means what is around that word, right? So and especially like in the example of Brahman, you have to see what is around that word to understand in which context they're talking about Brahman. So it can refer to the Brahma Jyoti, it can refer to a your devotee, it can refer to the impersonal. Well, we always say the Brahma Jyoti. So it can refer to different things. So therefore, you have to learn how to read not only the word but also the context in which the word is used. Right? So therefore, a word like Brahman, you just can't look at the words and in one. You have to also look at the context of how the word is used. Right? Then you'll understand what they're talking about. So Brahman can be the Brahma Jyoti. A Brahman can be a Brahmana. A Brahman can be the supreme absolute truth. You know, so we have to learn to read in context. What are the other words around that word Brahman to understand which Brahman is talking about.
Mostly Brahman, this is destination for jnani.
Okay, that's one way of.
The glossary in Bhagavad Gita is more than a dozen meanings. And okay, the glossary at the end of the Gita.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the Brahman is a huge list.
Yeah, definitely. That's why when you read something, you not only try and understand the word, but you have to also understand the word in the context it's used. Right? So
this particular second purport, so paragraph of this verse also touches upon the different aspects of the Brahman and Parabrahman.
of Canto 3, chapter 25, verse 41.
Yes, Maharaj.
Okay.
Touches upon. Actually, these statements are significant because here it explains just liberation is not just realizing Brahman stage.
Yeah, you have to realize a real Brahman is the supreme personality of Godhead coming up to that level of surrendering to the supreme personality of God. So in this verse, it says, without the surrendering process, one cannot achieve liberation. The Bhagavatam says, those who are simply puffed up, thinking themselves liberated by some non-devotional process, are not polished or clear in intelligence, for they have not yet surrendered unto you, in spite of executing all kinds of austerities and penances, or even arriving at the brink of spiritual realization. in Brahman realization, they think that they are in the effulgence of Brahman, but actually, because they have no transcendental activities, they fall down to material activities. Well, that's a very significant statement.
Right.
And I like the way he says that even if arriving at the brink of spiritual realization, that means you're right there, but not actually there.
Mm.
You know, you're on the brink. You're right, very close, but not actually fully realized. It's a nice word, the brink.
Yeah. I mean, it's actually, if you think about it, it's one thing about it, it's a very painful thing to work so hard to get so close, and then again the chance of falling down, which means that again we don't know how many lifetimes it can take again to get back to that.
It's because someone does not really completely surrender.
Mm.
Completely surrender means that you have a bona fide spiritual master and you don't do anything without the validation of the spiritual master. In other words, whenever you're going to make a real, let's say, an important decision, you should also always ask the spiritual master also what his opinion is. Of course, most people don't ask spiritual masters opinion, but a genuine devotee will never take a decision without asking the spiritual master or getting the advice of a bona fide spiritual master. Yeah, so that is the that's why some people don't want to surrender because they don't want to be hamstrung by the spiritual master. Look that word up, hamstrung. It has nothing to do with ham. What does that word mean, hamstrung? Basically, it means tied up. In other words, not surrenders. It's like surrender not. There was this uh, Indian revolutionary, his name was Surrender Not. And the British said, yes, he surrendered not, never surrendered. What does it say?
Yes, meaning severely restricted or held back. And interestingly, if we use this other chat GPT, it says it can be applied to spiritual discussions in Bhagavad Gita. It is when describing the limitations imposed by material nature and the ignorance on the soul. Basically, we are hamstrung by the material nature.
In other words, we're attached.
Yeah, attached, material desires, identification with the body.
You can't give them up. Yeah, a lot of people don't want to become Krishna conscious because they don't want to surrender. And but if we want to have a spiritual life, we have to surrender. Now, this is very interesting. The word surrender for many people is something that they don't want to do because they think if they surrender, they will not have any independence. But it depends on who you surrender to. If you surrender to a demon, yes, you won't have any independence. If you surrender to the devotee, you'll have transcendental, let's say, independence. You'll be free from Maya and you'll be able to go back to Godhead. That's if you surrender to a devotee. If you surrender to a demon, well, you'll be a slave. You will not be actually free. So it depends who you surrender to. Uh, and just like uh, someone who is on the brink of surrendering, but yet they don't actually surrender. Right? Why? Because they don't have faith. You really have to have a lot of faith to surrender to uh, a spiritual master. You have to have faith that both you have to be bona fide and the spiritual master has to be bona fide. The disciple also has to be bona fide. It's not that Tom, Dick, or Harry can be a devotee. A devotee has to be someone who is very anxious to surrender completely to the spiritual master and abide by the rules and regulations of Krishna consciousness and the word of the spiritual master.
One of the barriers is also falling down of gurus.
Yes.
Under the fear that condition the living entities.
Right.
Looking for safeguards.
Yeah, this is at least in the current generation, it's typically a very big challenge. Is the disciple is not, first of all, qualified enough to identify who's the right guru. Because there is no system of education until you get to that point.
And also,
Like, yeah,
as anything bad happens, it spreads faster than good.
yeah.
That's right. Broadcast it so faster than the good can broadcast it.
The bad transmits 10 times faster than the good.
Because at least I feel from my experience and from seeing others, they're conditioned by this way, falling down on gurus.
Well, unfortunately, that happens sometimes. And you can't say it's never happened. It's happened a lot. Yes. But also, there are gurus that don't fall down.
Yes, yes.
There are more gurus that don't fall down than gurus that do fall down. How to recognize who is the bona fide guru? Well, it takes time to recognize. You have to watch the guru. And at the same time, the guru is watching you. If you're going to be a serious disciple. So one is watching this way and the other is watching the other way. So that's a mutual attempt to see what is actually bona fide. So the bona fide guru will never be engaged in any suspicious activities. Sometimes there have been examples in the past of gurus who were like Don Quixote. Look that name up. Don Quixote. Don Quixote was a person who was always chasing after phantoms. Phantom means something that is not real. And but yeah, what does it say?
Don Quixote, written by Spanish author. No.
Yeah.
Yes, Spanish author. Yes.
Cervantes. Yes,
So, written by Spanish author Miguel de Cervantes, is a classic novel originally published in two parts in 1605 and 1650. The story follows Alonso Quixano, a man from La Mancha who becomes so captivated by tales of chivalry that he decides to become a knight errant himself, renaming himself Don
Quixote.
Quixote. He sets out on a quest to revive chivalry, right wrongs, and protect the helpless, accompanied by his loyal squire Sancho Panza.
Yeah, he has basically a servant,
Oh,
right? And they're on this, and the servant is following Don Quixote to defeat demons, right? But the whole thing is like illusion. He's fighting many wars in an illusory way. And so there are people like that, and they have followers. So that's the story of Don Quixote. He has a follower who's completely surrendered to him, and they're going out on these illusory battles to defeat an illusory enemy. And very interesting book, very interesting story. So they're basically fighting illusory battles in life. Is that what it says? Do you find it?
I think
Yeah.
if it's ChatGPT has a limit.
What?
There's a certain ChatGPT has a certain number of messages you can send
Yeah, unless you upgrade.
unless you upgrade to ChatGPT.
I think it's a free license.
yeah.
You're just using the free one. Once you buy it,
All right, but that doesn't have anything to do with Don Quixote.
Again, what's the spelling of it?
Yeah.
CONQU. UUIXOT.
Yeah.
So, what is the main message of Don Quixote? One must live life in a genuine way, passionately, in spite of what other people think.
Okay, but see, he was always on a mission.
Yeah, an idealistic mission. Which
Yeah.
is impractical.
Yeah, that's impractical. Exactly. There are people like that, and then they have followers. Yeah. There was once a guru. He had his devotees build a concrete ship, and once the ship was finished, he told his devotees to get on the ship, and they launched the boat, and they all sank into the water and died. So that's like investing in a stock that has a false, let's say, in other words, the people that own the stock are falsifying the actual books. They claim that they have so many assets, but they don't have any assets, right? And you become convinced, you invest in that stock, and the stock goes belly up. And what happens is that the man runs away with all the money. Cheater runs away with all the money. But he convinced the buyers that he has a lot of assets and he has a very good let's say future for making money, etc. So uh, these are cheaters who create a myth and convince the person that the myth is actually real. So there are people like that in the stock market. They create a narrative that their stock is way under what do you call valued.
Value or price.
Yeah, and that if you get in the buy that stock now before everybody else gets that stock, right? You'll be there before the stock takes off, right? Yeah, it takes off into the wind. So that but they create a narrative such that you become enticed by it. No, that's why you should always. There's a saying: trust not. Uh, well, I'll give you a real example. One time, this one devotee told me that he called me over and said, "Harivilas," he said, "I'm going to I am going to make enough money now to build the temple that you want." I said, well, I said, thank you. I said, it's really good. I said, how are you going to do it? Well, I've joined this group of people, and their program is that you can make 100% profit every month. I said, well, if it's too good to believe, don't believe it. He said, no, you don't know what you're talking about. I said, well, but then I realized they had captured his mind, right? So no matter what I was going to say, he was not going to listen to. And it actually happened. They took all his money and ran away, right? The whole thing was a hoax. But they created the hoax really good. They paid for a vacation in Hawaii for him to come to a
Resort.
well, no, not only a resort, the
Conference.
conference, yeah, and everything was paid for. You didn't have to pay anything, right? It was like a 3-day conference in Hawaii. So after that, he was convinced that they were, genuine, but the whole thing was a hoax. And after they got all this money and his mother's money also, at first he invested some money and he made money, right? So that's just like, putting some cheese on a rat trap. Right? The rat sees the cheese, but doesn't see that there's a trap. And it begins to nibble on it a little bit, and then it likes it, and then it really bites into it, and then the trap closes on its neck and kills it. Right? But that's what happened to this one person. Uh, he invested a little bit of money, let's say $2,000 or $3,000, right? And he got the money back and plus, right? So then he became convinced, and eventually he got his mother also to invest all her money, and at that point the rat trap closed. They lost everything, his money and his mother's money. Right? So these things happen. The people can create an illusion, and gullible people. You see, you can cheat people who are cheaters, but you cannot cheat a person who's not a cheater because they have common sense. They can tell if something is fishy, let's put it like that, and they won't jump. Some people jump without looking. Other people will look very carefully before they jump. uh, yeah, one time this when the person I knew, he called me up and he tried to convince me to invest in this you call a gold mine, you know. And he talked about a half an hour about how it's an absolute perfect investment, and he had studied it, and he was validating that there was no possibility of losing money, and he gave me a spiel, right, along with, and I said, you see, I had an uncle. My uncle, uh, he was a very, very suspicious person, right? So one time, some of his relatives came to him and they spoke to him. Well, first of all, they invited him. They had a big feast, right? And after the feast, they sat down with my uncle and they explained about this tremendous investment thing that, So he listened to it. First, he had the meal, right? After the meal, they sat him down and they talked about an hour explaining how great this investment was. And he kept saying, uh, there's a saying in Armenian, it doesn't fit in my mind. So after eating the meal, right, it was a big feast, right? And then they sat him down and they explained the whole thing to him. like in an hour, right? And after that, he said, it doesn't sit well in my mind. And they were like shocked when he said that. So they kept talking more and more. And he just kept saying, it doesn't fit in my mind. Right? It's just like a little proverb in Armenian, right? And eventually, he didn't invest any money, but he got a wonderful meal, and they gave him good treatment and respect, right? But they didn't get one penny from him because he was a very, very cautious person. You know why? Because the money that he did make, he had to work really hard to make that money. So he was not going to give it to anybody else, no matter how great the stock is going to be or how great the business venture is going to be, because he worked so hard to make that money. He was like holding on to it as if it's a what do you call it? A lifesaver? Right? What do you call this thing when you fall over
Yeah,
the boat?
Yeah, the ring thing.
Yeah, the ring. It's a lifesaver, right?
That boat. Oh, yeah, that one.
Like a life jacket or something.
Yeah, something like that.
Mm.
Yeah, he would not let go at all. So the relatives that tried to convince him to make a big investment, they tried as hard as they could, and he kept saying, "It doesn't sit well in my mind." And that's like a proverb in Armenian.
Why?
Yeah, he's a very wise man. And so that's why he had so much money, because he actually, my mother asked me once, she said, "Do you have a handkerchief?" I said, "No." She said, "No, you have to get a handkerchief." I said, "Why? I've never had a handkerchief." No, 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 no. She said, "You have to have a handkerchief." I said, "Why?" She said, "Well, if anyone comes and asks to borrow money from you, you take your handkerchief out and you start crying." You blow your nose and things, and don't stop until they go away. And this is, what you call old time wisdom. Haribol.
One of my um, kind of acquaintance in during the undergrad. After 16 years, he approached me on uh, the Facebook Messenger, and first thing he asked me is, "Can you support me some money?" And
Okay.
I was in dilemma what to say, because now I'm practicing
He wanted to
Krishna.
borrow money from you.
Yes, after 16 years, he approached me.
Wow.
And then I was in dilemma what to do because as we are practicing
No,
Krishna
no, you have to get a handkerchief.
and
You get a handkerchief, you start crying, and you don't stop until the person goes away.
and I was thought about it, and then the decision I took, which should not affect me through karma. Okay, then I think we haven't met in 16 years, so I don't know what is your situation. I think you should rely on the people that you have invested, who are close to you. Because I could support because I'm Krishna conscious. I could tend to support because he asked money. There may be reason, but because I don't know the person closely at all for the last 16 years, so it's better not to give. It's better. It's
Better to give it
karma.
to the people that you know
Yes.
and are honest, like the temple or something, right?
Exactly.
Why throw it up into the air to the cheaters?
They can say genuine reasons, but
Yeah.
because we haven't observed in person for years.
Right. Yeah. There used to be in the 1890s, 1820s. There have always been cheaters, but they used to be what you would call selling. Yeah, they would be selling an elixir that heals all sicknesses, right? And they would be good talkers. So they'd come to a town or a village, and then they would start hawking. Hawking means, talking, blah, 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 blah. And eventually people keep listening, 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 and then they buy the bottle of what you would call a elixir that heals everything, So, and he would always have a list of all the things that healed. and then people would come not only out of curiosity, but it was like an entertainment, right? And he would speak for like an hour or two and tell jokes and tell stories and and keep talking about how great his elixir is. And eventually, by hearing and hearing and hearing, the people would buy it. And then when he finished, selling everything, he'd pack everything and quickly leave that village, right? So before they realized that they were cheated. So there were people like that before. There's people like that today also.
Yes.
That's why, this one friend of mine, he was trying to convince me, to invest in stock. And I said, well, if it's too good to believe, don't do it. Right? If it's too good to believe, don't do it because it's a scam. So we have to be careful. There are many very, very highly skilled cheaters in the world. Right? And they know how to create an illusion. So we should not be easily influenced, right, in life. We should, it's just like there's a saying, it's a proverb amongst the tailors. They say, measure it not once, but measure it 10 or 15 or 20 times before you cut. Because the tailors have to cut cloth, right? The proverb is, measure it 10 times before you cut. Because after you cut, you can't come back. Haribol. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Otherwise, we will surrender completely the chat. No. Surrender to Prabhupada and Krishna. The chat. Yeah. Hare Krishna. All
Hare
good.
Krishna. Any questions online?
I have to ask this question first. Is there anyone online?
Is there?
Yes, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Yes, Maharaj. We are online. Shubha
Okay.
Deepavali, Maharaj. Dandavat Pranam for Deepavali.
Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Who is giving their attendance now? But we also need questions. All right. So if there are no questions,
There are no answers. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram.
Hare Ram. Hare
Hare
Ram.
Ram.
Ram, Ram, Hare Hare.
My dear devotees, have a very good day today.
Haribol.
And remember this takeaway from this verse today, which says, without the surrendering process, one cannot achieve liberation. Meditate on that today. Without the surrendering process, one cannot achieve liberation. Haribol.
Hari.
But you have to surrender to the right person, right? Or persons. Hare Krishna.
Hare
Hare Krishna.
Krishna. Hare Hare. Hare Ram. Hare Ram.